Bitcoin is finally breaking out. It's breaking out of its sideways trading range from the last 3 weeks, where we traded between 26.7 and 28.8K, and we are now above 30K. Now, what's driving all of this? On-chain metrics suggest that this is due to whales accumulating. So this is a chart from the Glassnode newsletter, from the recent Glassnode newsletter, and it looks at trend accumulation scores by cohort. So it looks at wallet sizes and it looks at how is the balance of Bitcoin changing over time. And what's interesting is that this is pretty blue for the wallets between 1K and 10K Bitcoin and between 100 and 1K Bitcoin. So quite large wallets. The very, very large wallets, right, above 10K, I think it makes sense to kind of ignore them because those tend to be rather exchange wallets. So this is accumulation done by the whales, by the big guys. And this tends to probably also be the reason why we are going above now so violently. Usually when you see price appreciations done by retail, those are normally driven relatively slowly because a lot of people buy in, it's purchase after purchase, and we usually increase relatively slowly. When you go up very violently, very quickly, that's normally the big guys doing big buying orders, right? So how are we going to continue here? There's two possible scenarios. The one simple explanation, very short term, is simply that we are overbought and that when we look at the RSI, at the hourly RSI, it might make sense to rather sell, right? When this is high, this tends to go down again. It tends to move in this range. So currently this should be a signal to sell and to rather take profits. And on the very short term, this might be true. But I think it's important to always zoom out and look at the grand picture. And there's two charts I think are important over the long term. The first one is the daily chart. So instead of looking at Bitcoin on the hourly chart here, let's look at the daily. And over here we've got two important facts, in my opinion. The first one is that Bitcoin's price is above the two best moving averages. So if you follow this channel for a while, you know this. I tend to backtest moving averages and I tend to trade according to those moving averages. When the price is above the moving averages, I tend to be long, so I tend to bet on rising prices, and vice versa. When the price is below the moving averages, I tend to be short, so I bet on falling prices. And I backtested what kind of durations for the moving averages are the best. And in red, we've got the best exponential moving average, and in green, we've got the best simple moving average. We are above both, which tends to be a signal that we should be rather bullish. So that's the positive thing here, right? The negative thing is that we did see quite a few turnarounds at the 32K mark. So when we zoom out here, we have seen, especially when we look at the intraday movements, we have seen turnarounds in this range relatively often. And this would suggest, again, that rather short term, maybe the upside potential isn't that massive. We could very easily, again, see a retracement, and the potential for that retracement is 17% minus if we go down to the EMA, or if you go down to the SMA, even 27%. Now, this is short and medium term. I personally don't like to trade Bitcoin in such a short term. I like to be rather the person that dollar cost averages into Bitcoin and that only sells when we are very, very heated. This is different to altcoins. With altcoins, I do active trading. With altcoins, I think it's important to always look at tokenomics and to look at how is currently supply and demand developing. For Bitcoin, that's not as easy because Bitcoin is also influenced more by the macro picture, right? By, for example, what traditional finance is doing. So I personally like to rather approach Bitcoin over the long term. And I like to look at over the next months, is currently Bitcoin rather cheap or rather expensive? And there are plenty of models out there to estimate this. The market value to realized value Z-score is one of them. Logarithmic regressions are another one. There's all kinds of different metrics, trading activity, etc. What I do, what I like to look at here is just a simple curved line. So these are not even logarithmic regressions. These are just curved lines that connect the tops and that connect the bottoms. And when we look at this chart, the potential top, right, the potential upside for Bitcoin is more than 100K. Okay, so this is where we could potentially top out in the next bull run. Of course, this is no perfect model. It's just simply a very straightforward one. The potential risk, if you go down here, is maybe to 19, 20K, something like this. So a risk of minus 40%, a potential reward of 230%. So simply just from this perspective, right? Dollar cost averaging in and holding Bitcoin over the long term until we get the next bull market might make sense. We see a lot of on-chain metrics also that especially the long-term investors, they are not moving their Bitcoin yet. So we are, for example, for the 2-year hodl wave at an all-time high. Bitcoin has never been held for such a long period of time by so many people. We also see an all-time high at the 5-year and the 10-year hodl wave. So Bitcoin gets less and less liquid over time, which is good, right? The less liquid it is, the more additional buy pressure pushes up the price. Also sell pressure, but since more and more people hold it for long term, the buy pressure is more important. So when it's less liquid, when the order books are thinner, then whoever comes into the market pushes up the price more. And this is, in my opinion, a very, very good time to simply just continue buying in. Important though is that this is long term. So don't look at Bitcoin just over the next few days, because we could very easily go back down to say 25K. But it's no certainty either, right? We could simply just continue to go straight up. We have seen this in the past as well, right? We went above those moving averages and we did not necessarily hit them during a bull run. And especially when we are now in the grand scheme of things relatively cheap, we could simply just continue to straight go up. And that's always the risk, right? When in general, in the macro picture, you agree that we are comparatively cheap, then if we don't see this retracement, if we don't see this little correction, then you might be FOMOing in, right? When it just continues to go up and we suddenly see the 35K and the 40K, then you might want to catch this wave still and buy back in way higher. So instead of doing that, I think it's better to buy in early and to be okay with a little bit of a correction. When those models don't break and when the long-term holders are not suddenly starting to sell and are not suddenly starting to panic, then why not simply just be part of those long-term holders and continue to allocate to Bitcoin and continue to ride this wave upwards? That's, I think, is the best approach for Bitcoin. Unless, of course, if you want to trade those waves, the best way is to only be bearish on Bitcoin, to only be betting on falling prices, or to only be in cash if we are really below those best backtested moving averages. The backtested moving averages in the past predicted Bitcoin's price movements the best, and they made the best selling signals. If you compare this with any other moving average, if you also compare this to more advanced indicators like the double exponential moving average or like the RSIs, etc., you can take all kinds of different indicators. The more simple they are, the better they tend to also work. That's simply just my experience. So far, I have not yet seen anything better than the best SMA and the best EMA. No other indicator that beats this. And you really shouldn't be too pessimistic about Bitcoin if we are still above both, even though we do have a little bit of headwind going forward, and even though we might drop to 26, 25, 24K. It's very much possible, but it's not really a problem if your time horizon is long enough. Now, I have made a specific video just on those backtests, and that's following directly after this video. Looking forward to seeing that video, and feel free also to join our Telegram and Discord. The links are down below. See you. Bye-bye.